to the University of Nebraska and hear about all the really, really great stuff that's going on here. I serve on a number of committees. Two of those committees, one is the Ag Committee. This will be the second farm bill that I'm participating in writing. The second committee that I tie in with this is Appropriations Committee. And on Appropriations Committee, I'm on 5 subcommittees. One of those is Agriculture. It is extremely important that we have a strong bipartisan bill come out of the United States Senate. We are on track to do that. I recently had Senator John Bozeman out here in Nebraska a few weeks ago, and we were able to show Senator Bozeman, who is the ranking member on the Ag Committee, a number of things that are going on. We met at the university facility up in Meade, Nebraska, heard about a lot of research going on, met with ag producers, we met with farm credit. We had a full day, and Senator Bozeman, who's from Arkansas, he had a good grasp, which he's had anyway, but he had a better grasp of who we are in Nebraska, what our concerns are in this state, what we're looking at with regard to any kind of risk management that's available for our producers, what we're looking at with precision ag and all the opportunities there, disaster payments, looking at being able to have conservation programs that continue to be voluntary for our producers and have incentives out there. And again, to find that balance then between about the 17% of the Farm Bill that deals with farming and about 80% of the Farm Bill that deals with nutrition programs. We're gonna get there. There's a few bumps in the road as we move down, but on Ag Committee we'll get there. In Appropriations Committee, we will work extremely hard for the producers in this state, and I plan to also continue my work in representing the interests of our land-grant institution here, the University of Nebraska. We have outstanding programs at this university. We do good work at this university, and it's part of my job as a member on the Appropriations Committee to advocate for these great programs that we have at this university, the great research that's done, and make sure that it can continue and grow. So I am excited about those committees, the possibilities that are there. I'm optimistic and plan to work very, very hard to get a good bill done.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Next, Nebraska's junior U.S. Senator, needs no introduction. He just finished two terms as Nebraska's governor. Please welcome Pete Ricketts.
Well, thank you very much, Mike, and thank you all very much for being here this afternoon. The Farm Bill is incredibly important for Nebraska. Agriculture is the heart and soul of what we do here in our state. It drives our economy. 1 in 4 jobs in Nebraska are tied back to agriculture. And not only is it important to our state, it's important to our country. Food security is national security. So it's important that we have a farm bill that supports our farmers and ranchers in making sure we can continue to feed our great nation and indeed the rest of the world. And Senator Fisher hit upon some of the important things like making sure we have strong crop insurance, that we have voluntary conservation programs, and, for example, the research here at the University of Nebraska, whether it's things like our biotechnology that we're developing here, the drought monitor, some of the robotics we just saw that are going to improve how efficient we can be on the farm, all those things are incredibly important. And then Senator Fisher also mentioned about how really over 80% of that farm bill has to do with the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, the SNAP program. And one of the things that we did here in Nebraska is our SNAP Next Step program, where we took our coaches in the Department of Labor and offered them to our SNAP families. And those families who participate in that program were able to increase their incomes, many times reducing their need for SNAP or eliminating it entirely. So there's lots of opportunities for us to be able to think about how we can do things better in the future. And I look forward to working with my senior senator, Deb Fisher, who's been a great coach and mentor to me, as we look forward to how we can make sure we get a farm bill passed and that it works for Nebraska. So thank you all again very much for being here this afternoon. With that, I will turn it back over to Congressman Flood.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts. You know, I started in the legislature the same time Senator Fisher did, and we both had the opportunity to work with now Congressman Adrian Smith, then State Senator Adrian Smith, and I know I speak for all of us here when we recognize his service to the nation, his service to our state, and you might not know this, but he is the dean now of the Nebraska House delegation. He's not that much older than me, but he's the dean of the House delegation. So with that, he has been a strong voice for ag. He's been a strong voice for free and fair trade for our ag products and finding new markets. Please welcome Adrian Smith.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and especially here on East Campus. And I do want to say how much I appreciate the university's footprint across Nebraska, because we know what happens across Nebraska. I mean, I just happen to live in the neighboring time zone, but that what happens across our state, we can impact the world. And so your work, whether it's in Scottsbluff at the Research and Extension Center, whether it's here with a lot of undergraduate students or graduate students, so much, I just cannot say enough how important it is, the work that we do. It's about the future. And then the extension takes all this research, makes it all work, presents it to producers. Research really isn't as valuable if no one wants to take it and do something with it. And so whether it's sugar beets and dry edible beans out in the panhandle, or corn everywhere in Nebraska and beyond, or beef across Nebraska, I mean, the needs are so great. We've got a growing population, we need to feed them. And so we have a farm bill coming up, and we need to get this right as best we can heading into another 5-year period. We do not want to tie the hands of producers unintentionally, so we need to be careful there. And we want to look to the future, like I said, with research and be able to lean into the challenges that we face throughout the industry. Economic cycles are a pretty sobering thing through all of this. And so we want the agility for producers to be able to innovate for the future, hopefully smooth things out economically for themselves, and to also, though, constantly be thinking about the future, whether it's in the Farm Bill, other research projects. I just can't say enough how important it is, and I'm glad we can gather here, the entire delegation. We can gather here, and we talk all the time, so it's really not that big of a deal that all 5 of us are together, but it is to be together in Nebraska at this moment. The Nebraska breakfast, the lunch was so good here. You know, some of us think a working lunch may not be so great, but this was a really good working lunch. And maybe I mentioned that the catering maybe should take a look at the Nebraska breakfast. I'm teasing about that. But no, this is a great team, and we're able to work together on your behalf. I'm grateful to be a part. Thank you.
Next up, we have the congressman from District Number 2, representing all of Douglas County, all of Saunders County, and a sliver of Sarpy County. We're very fortunate to have him on the Agriculture Committee. Out of all the House members, he stepped up when there wasn't a representative on an Ag Committee in Congress and did that for Nebraska, and he's done a wonderful job, and he's at the intersection of the House authoring of the Farm Bill. And I have a feeling that pork is going to get a better shake from bacon than anything else. So with that, please welcome Don Bacon.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to the University of Nebraska for hosting us today. This has been a wonderful experience for lunch, and we've had just a great morning. I was raised on a farm before I joined the Air Force, so I worked on the farm until I was 21 years old, and the very first tractor that I was taught to drive was an International 560. Right there. How old are you? I'm not gonna say how old I am. But it would take me all day to plant or disc or spray 50 acres. Today, using that tractor, it takes 2 hours, right? So just how far we've come. I didn't have GPS on my tractor either when I was disking, and my rows were like this. Today, you have these precision rows, so we've come a long way. Senator Ricketts mentioned that 1 out of 4 jobs in Nebraska are agriculture. A lot of folks tend to downplay ag for Omaha or Lincoln. I'm here to tell you that's also vitally important to the economy of Omaha. When you look at agribusiness, that is Omaha. Whether it's finance, transportation, commodities, food processing, irrigation. A lot of people don't realize we have the majority of the world's pivot irrigation sales in Omaha with the companies that we have. So it's very important for us there too. Just some of the highlights today. I've always known that crop insurance, affordable crop insurance is vital. We've had 2 years of drought here. Many farmers could not have survived with 2 years of drought without a crop insurance program. We want to preserve our agriculture base, and affordable crop insurance is important. We know trade is vital. We export beef, ethanol, popcorn, corn, soybeans, pork, you name it. We're, I think I've heard today, the 3rd largest export state. So it's vitally important to our economy. Biofuels, we know how important that is. And research, that's an area that myself and Mike Flood agree on, because we have the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and Omaha that does a lot of research, and we want to leverage that as much as we can. I'll just give you a stat. In the 1930s, we used to have 35 bushel an acre for corn. Today, it's way over 200. Just an example or an illustration of what research can do. I want to talk about the Farm Bill briefly. I think like everything we do in Congress, it'll be a little messy, but in the end, we're going to get a bipartisan Farm Bill done. And I think some of the biggest hurdle that we've already sort of dealt with, and that is the SNAP program. 80% of the Farm Bill is SNAP. A lot of people don't realize that, nutrition assistance. But we've had a big debate for years with both parties on the role of work requirements. I think we already have a handshake agreement on how that's going to look for this Farm Bill. So I think one of the biggest hurdles are already gone. And I'll just close my comments with this. We are blessed to live in the United States of America, where we spend less than 10% of our GDP on putting food on the table. We have made food affordable in this country better than any country in the world. And we can help feed much of the world too. So we really appreciate all the folks today that have helped us with their expertise and give us some great advice. And I love working with a great team here. We are a team, and we're better working together. Thank you.
I want to close the formal remarks by just thanking once again the University of Nebraska system, University of Nebraska-Lincoln for hosting us. We had a wonderful working lunch today to learn about the innovation, the research, plant science, everything that's happening here at the University of Nebraska. And sometimes we take our food security for granted. Sometimes we take the fact that we use less than 10% of our annual income to pay for our food, which is a lower number than almost any other country on earth. People take for granted that they have all of these options, and the reality is we have these options because the University of Nebraska has been working since its inception to advance the research and make it possible. And I'm hoping that we'll be successful as a delegation, increasing the number of researchers on Innovation Campus from the United States Department of Agriculture. So thank you, Vice Chancellor Boehm, thank you Chancellor Boehm, thank you to President Ted Carter and the entire leadership team here at UNL. With that, we're going to take some questions. We want to confine the questions to the Farm Bill. If there's time after, which I'm sure there will be, you'll have the opportunity to do individual questions. Aaron Sanderberg, here's the game though. You have to pick which one of us you want to answer the question.
Well, I'll let any of you answer, but basically you each talked about the importance of research, but you've also participated in efforts in Congress to try to rein in spending. How do you keep up with China and what they're spending and their rate of increase in research at a time when you're also trying to rein in spending? Can you do both of those things?
Well, I think there's two different questions. Is it one-time spending? Is it discretionary spending? Is it mandatory spending? And as a member of Congress, whenever I see a program that creates any kind of mandatory spending program or continues one that I don't think is that meets the test that the taxpayers need to pay for, I voted no. The reality is that we do allocate as a nation a certain percentage of our budget for research, specifically in plant science and food production. The The effort that I'm taking right now is I went to the Ag Committee appropriations process, and I made the case for the new project at the UNL campus. And every single person on that appropriations panel was familiar with our project and had previously funded parts of it to the tune of about $20 million. And so this would be a continuing follow-up on a promise that was already made by the United States Congress. Generally though, I'm not, and I know I speak for my colleagues here, we are not about setting up new programs. We're talking about following through on the priorities of the United States from a research perspective. And if it's not mandatory, it's, you know, in most cases, it's not even ongoing. It's simply funding the facilities that will ultimately lead to more efficiency for our crops and our farmers. Bryce. Well, it's the Farm Bill and the appropriations bills, and so by the end of September, early October, you'll certainly see a draft or two as to what it's going to look like, and then it's that working with the Senate. We're very fortunate in Nebraska to have Senator Fisher on the Appropriations Committee in the United States Senate. Whenever I talk about anything related to the effort here at UNL, I always remind my staff that this doesn't go anywhere if we don't have the right advocate in the right place at the U.S. Senate. So I feel like there's a pathway to make progress. We're not going to get everything we want, but I could let Senator Fisher speak to that if she wants as a member of the Appropriations Committee.
I know some of you followed my career in the Nebraska legislature, so it comes as no surprise that I always talked about you have to set priorities for government. When you're an elected official, you have to set what those priorities are for government. That was one of the main reasons I wanted to get on the Appropriations Committee, to be able to look at the programs that are out there, in my judgment, and representing the people of Nebraska, to decide what are federal priorities of government. Obviously, research is one of them, whether it's here for the university or whether it's through NIH. It's extremely important to have federal dollars be able to go to institutions, not just state land grant institutions, but institutions across the spectrum where we see great research happening. But that also means that you have to look at programs that aren't working in the way you want. That's one thing about having the delegation be able to go out today and listen to producers specifically talking about what's needed in the Ag Bill, in the Farm Bill, because we want to hear about programs that are important to producers. You know, all of us have Nebraskans come to our office and reach out to us every single day on different programs, but this is one where Farm Bill comes out every 5 years. We want to know what's working, what needs to be funded, and then make hard decisions on what we're not going to fund, because spending has to get under control.
Steve.
Senator Fisher, maybe you can dovetail on the spending side of this. As you said, I like to call it food and Farm Bill because the nutrition title is more than 3/4 of the pie. Are we going to be able to continue to have bipartisan support for a Farm Bill, especially considering the SNAP cuts that were included in the debt limit?
Obviously, in the United States Senate, we're working hard for a bipartisan bill. That's not only, I think, a good way to develop good policy, but it's reality in the United States Senate. We have to come together to get a bipartisan bill. And yes, there have been lines drawn in the sand on things that folks on the other side of the aisle feel are necessary, and people in my party, what we feel are necessary. I think you have to, as I said in my comments earlier today, you have to reach a balance to be able to address the diversity that we have in this country. And just look, if you're just looking at agriculture, look at the diversity of agriculture in the state of Nebraska. Think about that across the entire United States. So Chairman Stabenow, she likes cherries, and she's going to work on those specialty crops. She's not really into the big farming that we do here in Nebraska and in the Midwest. But yeah, we're going to have to come together on just items like that. And then when you look at the nutrition programs, all of us understand the importance of these programs. School lunches, this is where most kids get their meal. 1 meal a day, sometimes 2 if they're there for breakfast, sometimes over the summer as well. This is important. Looking at the SNAP program. Now when you look at the parameters of some of these programs, that's when you get into the discussions, that's when you look at the decisions that have to be made. But that's it on, you know, any piece of legislation. That's what you're going to be dealing with.
I think it's important to add, anytime we talk about spending, we talk about revenue as well. We've had record levels of revenue. And I don't think anyone claims to have the ability to cut our way into balance. But if we take a more modest approach to spending, and as Senator Fisher mentioned, focus on prioritization, maintain a strong economy, that when the economy is growing, funny thing how it works, the revenues come in by a lot. And so we've seen record levels of revenue. We've also seen record levels of spending previously. I mean, President Biden's priorities have been on the spending side. And we have to change that to where we can fund the priorities, get the things done that we absolutely need to get done, have a strong economy, and a brighter future as a result.
Yes, Roger.
Was there anything today that you learned from engaging with stakeholders, farmers, ranchers, that became a new priority that you didn't realize before engaging with them today?
I was going to say, so the question was, are there anything that came to light today that will become a new priority? And one of the things we heard about from the State Dairy Association was the Biden administration trying to get rid of chocolate milk in our school lunches. And this is something that is incredibly important for nutrition. Senator Fisher mentioned sometimes, you know, these youngsters, that's the only solid meal they're getting all day. And we want them to have a healthy meal that involves dairy, that's a part of making sure they've got strong bones. So this is a huge mistake from the standpoint of making sure that we've got a great nutrition program for our young people. So this is one of the things that I'm going to be fighting to help keep that milk in those school lunch programs, because this would be a disaster for those youngsters if that got pulled out.
Yeah, talking to the researchers here today, it's been interesting. I asked about scale. They had a smaller robot that moves a little differently than this big monster back here. And he pointed out that there will be more frequently the smaller apparatus, which, well, this back here is past, present, and future. So that one's a lot smaller, but imagine the efficiencies that can take place, you know, in contrast to what we're kind of dealing with now. And it's those types of reminders that I certainly appreciate. And that's by good work that is taking place and always thinking about the future.
One issue that I think has taken front stage is Proposition 12 in California, as it relates to the animal care standards that the California legislature has imposed and the U.S. Supreme Court has essentially ratified, to the surprise of many. It's going to have a severe effect on folks that consume pork in the state of California due to the increased costs associated, we're predicting, from the mandate that's been pushed there. And this is a dangerous precedent that has apparently been set for all of us in the nation, and I think it truly impedes not only interstate commerce, but it's going to significantly increase the cost of food in certain parts of the country. One or two more questions. Andrew. Do I have any idea what the Farm Bill might come out as far as cost-wise?
I don't know the Farm Bill top line yet, but we have the overall discretionary spending, and it's a little above FY22 levels, but we can move money around within those various pots of money. So I think we're still up in the air on what the top line will be for ag, unless one of you all know differently.
Is it? 40 billion? Oh, no. In the Senate, we have in our own discussions where the top line will probably be, but since we're not entering into a markup at this point in time, I would say we just have to wait and see how the markup goes then.
We'll do one last question for today.
Are we on track to get a farm bill this year?
Well, we better ask someone that's been here for more than a year. I will give you my analysis from where I sit. The debt ceiling discussion that we had as a Congress and the decision that was arrived to, I thought showed that Congress in Washington was able to address the debt ceiling limit. And while nobody voted the exact same way on the bill, I think it's important to note that there was a really good focus in America on getting something done. We have a lot of big deadlines looming for September 30th, FAA reauthorization, the NDAA for the national defense is something we work on every year, and it usually gets passed. The Farm Bill, the Coast Guard, and then 12 appropriations bills. For the first time in a very long time, the House of Representatives is going to work towards passing every single one of the 12 appropriations bills so that we can be methodical about it. And I think there's a lot on the plate. I think it'll really call into question whether we work more in August than we had planned to. I don't know how we get everything done without working more. But I feel like there's a general consensus the Farm Bill has to pass and that it would be early in the fourth quarter.
I love Senator Flood, but I'm going to disagree with him a little bit.
Oh, good.
Here we go. The Farm Bill, I was really optimistic to begin with, and I thought the Senate would get the Farm Bill done before August. But as I alluded to in my comments, we're seeing some bumps in the road, so it may be a while. And remember, the House and Senate have to get one bill passed in order to get it to go to the president. On Armed Services Committee, we're doing a markup on the NDAA this coming week. And yes, that we should get a markup completed on that, but remember, the last 2 years in Senate Armed Services, we got our work done, got it done early, and Senator Schumer never put it up on the floor. So it wasn't passed in the Senate, even though a few people got together and then put one together to get it passed. On Commerce Committee, we took up FAA this last week, went to a markup, ready to get it marked up, and things kind of fell apart at the last minute there as well. So hopefully, in appropriations, we're kind of on track to get those 12 appropriations bills done. But I guess I'm being more cautious now, Steve, in looking at everything we have to get done, knowing that there could be extensions and things are moving slower than I think all of us planned at the beginning of the year.
With that, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out. And again, big thank you to the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and this laboratory and everybody that's associated with it. We really appreciate it.